This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Battleground Nutrition Centers. Battleground Nutrition is a family and veteran-owned and operated supplement superstore in the Northeast that's been running since 2013, and since then has helped athletes all over the world in APO, FPO, and within the United States PO boxes to ensure that whether you are in the Northeast or anywhere in the world, we can help you with your nutritional needs. Visit www.bgnutritioncenter.com and use code NATTY to save at checkout. And a reminder, all orders over $100 always ship free. What's going on, everybody, and thanks for tuning in again to the U-Natty States of America. I am your host, as always, 3-time Mr. Natural Olympia, 2-time Mr. Universe, Brandon Lirio. I just want to remind everybody to be sure to rate, subscribe, and comment below wherever you decide to get your podcast from. We're available on Apple iTunes, Google Play, as well as Spotify, and I'm trying to get you the content that you want to hear. So if there's something that you think needs to be said here on United States of America or somebody you want to see as a guest host, please feel free to email us at bgfitnessonline@gmail.com or just drop us a line in the comments section. Today's episode is a very simple one. You've heard me talk on different episodes about rigged bodybuilding. You've heard me talk about judges' bias, politics, all that stuff. Sometimes the shows really are rigged, and this time I'm here to tell you a story about the most rigged show in bodybuilding history. Now, for legal reasons, I can't state the name of the federation or the name of the specific show, but I am going to go into much detail in terms of what happened, when it was, and tell you the story about the most rigged show in the universe, if you catch my drift. The year back when I was in the military is, I believe it was 2015. No, sorry, 2014. I'm overseas, stationed in Germany, and I'm taking a group of military members that are also fitness competitors around the world to compete. We decide that we're going to do this one show in Barcelona, Spain, which is just a couple countries over, short flight, no big deal. For weeks, I'm emailing the promoter to try and get out some of the information in terms of what we can expect, what's the pump-up area look like, what's the schedule of events, and it's taken this dude like 1 to 2 weeks to keep getting these answers to me, and they're like lukewarm in terms of what we need at best. So automatically, I feel like we're trying to compete with a leg back. And the issue is, again, we're overseas, so we don't necessarily all speak the language. We're trying to travel to stop the water retention and bloat that you get when you fly overseas or really anywhere to compete, right? So not having that basic information is important. But you know what? Me and my 6 athletes jump on a plane. We go to Barcelona. We arrive on Wednesday. Thursday morning, 2 days before the actual event is supposed to take place, we get an email. And not even necessarily an email that explains the change. The way I remember it happening is it was posted online on the actual event page that basically said they changed the venue and that all athletes were now expected to check in at the original time at the new venue that was 40 minutes outside of Barcelona proper. Now, when I tell you that it might be easy to just hop in a cab, I can also tell you that it's not cheap, or at least it wasn't at the time. 40 minutes outside the city for however many competitors you have registered, and you're only giving them 48 hours notice, already we're like, uh-oh, this is a problem, right? So sure enough, we show up to registration, only to find out via a sign on the front door that the registration has been moved from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Okay, now what the fuck are we supposed to do? So sure enough, at least I plan for contingencies because I happen to be just a little bit OCD about how I do things. So we've scheduled a photo shoot, no big deal. There's a pool, there's like a little area in the lobby that looks really neat for the ambient lighting. So that's what we decided we're going to do. We're going to lean hard into the photo shoot and just do that before the registration. Great. As we're taking these photos, I see a good friend of mine who happens to work for this federation come up the road. And I say, "Oh man, how's it going?" He goes, "Well, the promoter at the last minute decided that he didn't just want to run the show, that he wanted to compete. So he called the head office a couple weeks before this show was supposed to take place, decided to relinquish his duties as the head promoter and just become a competitor and needed someone to come run the show." Why you would agree to that as the federation is beyond me, but hey, none of my business. So I tell him, all right, cool, well, registration's supposed to start in what, like 30 minutes? Well, actually, we're going to push that back so I can have enough time to load the computer up, get everybody's information loaded up, figure out what we're doing. So we've decided that it's no longer at noon, that now it's at 1:15. Okay, great. Shift it again. No problem. We'll figure out something to do. As long as our meals are good, as long as our peaks are good, the stage photos and our stage presentation is going to be good enough. But at this point, we're pretty fucking pissed off. Over the course of the next couple hours, competitors start showing up, and I clock it somewhere between 38 and 40 competitors. So, as these competitors show up, my friend opens the door, the line starts. When I tell you we were standing there for 30 minutes and that thing didn't move one person, we started to get a little bit worried that this show was even going to take place at all. So myself, as well as one other well-versed competitor in the crowd, go up to my friend and we say, hey, listen, you know, we've been doing this long enough. We know what show registrations look like. We know the information that you need from people. We know what information to disseminate to other people in terms of what's important for competitors. Do you want some help? Sure, man. I'll take it. No problem. So we get a bunch of these hard copies and we start helping with registration, which significantly reduces the amount of time it takes for people to actually get in there and start their registrations. So, as registration ends in the late afternoon, we say, all right, we may have righted this ship. Let's get it together. So the show begins around 4 p.m. Now, anybody that knows anything about bodybuilding knows that the morning show, once it starts, is usually around 11, and that the intermission starts somewhere between 3 and 4 p.m., and that 5:30 to 6 is when the night show starts. So now the morning show has begun at 4 p.m., and they've altered the schedule to make it a single show running order. Great. No worries. Let's rock and roll. Here's the problem. Once the show starts, music starts, my MC, good friend of mine, told me just minutes before the show starts that even though we're in Spain and most of these people don't speak English, as is their right, he doesn't really speak anything but conversational Spanish. So now he has to go through the show and MC in a language that he doesn't fully know and trying to portray information to people who only speak that language. Hey man, good luck to you. So the show starts. This music's pretty odd. Seems like they're only playing Pitbull. 4th song in. Dude, they are only playing Pitbull. By the 5th song, a commercial pops up. And this is when I realize that the only music that the venue has to play for the competitors is a Spotify account that has not paid for Spotify Premium. So for the next couple of hours, as we go through this story, imagine that every 10 to 15 minutes or so, the 4th Pitbull song comes up, and it's pretty much the same 4 Pitbull songs. And then a commercial comes up about telling me about my little Chico Pitbull and his concert on Spotify. And I'm blown away at the fact that the only thing that we have to listen to is a non-premium Spotify account that is also playing commercials while people are posing on stage. Hey man, it is what it is at this point. Granted, since this was a venue that was purchased and the head promoter basically stepped back, the lighting also isn't super ideal. So, as these photos are coming out and we're trying to get good feedback in terms of coaches to our athletes, in terms of what to do for the rest of the show, it becomes pretty difficult. But you know what? At least the show is moving, right? So, prejudging, quote unquote, ends, and the night show begins. First class comes out, no problem. Second class comes out, placings are a little wonky. But hey, maybe the judges see something we don't, the lighting's a little off. I should also note that all the fanfare that normal shows get in terms of the banners on the stage and, specific, none of that stuff. It's literally just looks like an auditorium that's about to have an assembly in a middle school. But the venue itself was actually really nice in terms of the hotel. I'll give them that. But third, 4th class comes out, and these positions are now looking hella wonky, where the final straw that broke the camel's back is a grouping of 2 people in the middleweight bodybuilding division. One of them looks like a bodybuilder. The other one looks like a half-cocked men's physique competitor. It's no disrespect to him. In terms of his age, he was a good 10 years younger than the other guy, and he just needed time to catch up. May have been his first show. He wasn't ready to win. but somehow the judges saw it that he was supposed to win. All of a sudden, we see the head judge kind of pop his head up, walks over, grabs the microphone, and in Spanish goes to every person at the judges' table. I would like to know who you voted for in terms of winning this division. And sure enough, not a single judge had the winner in first place. Uh-oh. So as I'm hearing conversationally and picking pieces of Spanish out of this conversation, I look at my wife and I look at my other coaches that are next to me and I say, yo, it's about to get wild. Sure enough, the head judge looks at the MC and says, you're from the head office. You picked the guy who was counting the votes. I want a recount. And all the judges go up in arms about needing the scores to be recounted because clearly something fishy is going on. Uh-oh. So sure enough, things keep progressing, and they find out that there were many times within these scores that it was impossible for the winner of that division to have won their placing in the division. So, as they continuously progress in terms of recounts, the lights come up. Now the coaches are starting to get really pissed off. We all know that competing is not cheap, right? We all know that it takes time, effort, and basically by the time you reach the stage, you're some of the unhealthiest you've ever been in terms of super low body fat percentage, compromised immune system, you haven't eaten a ton, and you're trying to peak for a very, very short and specific window. Sure enough, these coaches are now pissed because it's about 8:30 at night. We have not but 4 divisions that have their placings, and they appear to be rigged and incorrect. So coaches start yelling, factions start forming, and it starts getting a little violent in this place, man. So sure, we keep going. Let's keep this recount going. 9 p.m. rolls around. Competitors are now pissed off because they know that, hey, there's a really good chance that not only are these scores rigged, but that nothing good is going to come out of this show or its placings. So people start stealing the trophies. We start looking over at the table where all the trophies were, and they start slowly disappearing, winding up in people's bags, slipping out the back door. Oh boy. I know that the only thing I can do is try and keep my competitors calm and respectful. So I go to the bar, get a couple of boozy drinks, hand them out to my competitors on my dime. Listen, relax, have a seat. I don't know what's going to happen next, but we're in this for the long haul and we're already here. So chill out and let's see what happens next. One of the helpers backstage, who apparently was the one that counted the votes and from the judges' table, is now screaming at the top of his lungs, and his entourage is having to physically remove him from the venue because he's claiming that he knows that several of the teams that are in the house, and one of the reasons why they shouldn't be apt to win these trophies is because their competitors have cheated, and they are on steroids. Literally being the natty police at a drug-tested show before the drug tests are administered and doing a little vigilante justice to ensure that nobody who would cheat would be issued a trophy. First of all, really fucked up. But second of all, when I say this dude needed to be physically removed, he at the time was wearing a sweater with the logo of the Federation on it, and he just rips it off, which by the way was a super alpha move, but rips his sweater off, throws it on the ground, stomps it, and starts yelling, steroids, steroids, I know you're all cheating, steroids. So his team has to physically remove him. And this is when it really starts to get swirly. Because as these other coaches hear him, they now are upset because they think that he's only referring to the other coaches. So physical altercations start breaking out between these coaches and competitors in terms of who's clean, who's not, who deserves a trophy. Maybe those counts were right. It's not, their fault that their competitor now needs to go back and give their trophy back because the people that they hired cheated. Whatever, man. We knew at this point that this was the end of the line. So these coaches start having physical altercations, fist fights in the crowd of this venue. And I look up and I see my boy up on stage and he is just mortified, just ghost white. And I look at my competitors and I go, listen, we gotta go. Pack your shit. We're getting out of here. As we're packing up our stuff, and we see more and more trophies just start disappearing, right? The promoter and the guy who took over for the promoter are now meeting with the owner of the venue at the hotel. And he basically says, I'm not cleaning up a bunch of these bottles that you guys have thrown. A bunch of competitors left food and stuff backstage. Not only do you guys got to go, I've already called the cops. So if you're not out of here in the next 10 minutes, anyone who's left here will be trespassing, and we're going to issue them civil suits for trespassing on our property. Peace. We're out. I take all my guys, we go outside, and we're looking for taxi cabs. The only problem is there were so many people at this venue, there's no taxi cabs left. And again, we're 40 minutes outside the city. So the only thing that we can do is call these Barcelona taxi companies who literally are going to have to finish their routes and send somebody back when we know the cops are on the way. Okay, sure enough, one of my buddies, his friends came and drove from another country to come see him compete. We packed 7 people into this 4-door sedan just to get out of the city so that we don't get arrested. We all jump in, and as we're leaving, these 2 or 3 cop cars pull up. We see them jump out. We see all the people that were in the venue start to filter out. Last thing I see looking through that rearview mirror is just those cops pull way up, doors fly open, people come out, and we just see this altercation of regular members of the public, and then the cops show up, and they just come together, and then we come over that hill, and I never saw these people again. That's not even the end of the story. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Nirvana Water Sciences. Muscle integrity is the foundation of our body's overall health because it supports movement, posture, breathing, and many other things. Enter Nirvana Water Sciences HMB-infused water. HMB, or hydroxymethylbutyrate, is a unique derivative of leucine, the isolated amino acid. It helps with things like protein synthesis, nutrient absorption, and can help athletes and regular people alike with general health as well as recovery from hard workouts. So, click the link in the description below to find out where you can get Nirvana Water Sciences HMB-infused water products today. Here I am thinking as a reasonable individual that, sure enough, the Federation themselves is going to issue some sort of a statement, an apology, give refunds, and then we're all going to move on with our competitive careers. But I have to know what the fuck happened. So, I text my buddy, hey man, what the hell was all that about? What are we supposed to do now? The show never even ended. They just turned the music off and kicked us all out. He says, spoken to the Federation president. They've decided that obviously the show cannot continue, and they're not going to be hosting a show here anymore. So we're going to be issuing refunds, but I myself need to call up all the competitors and send out a social media blast and an email because the president of the Federation wanted me to be the face of this show. Now is when I start to get a little bit pissed off. Obviously, I'm upset for my competitors beforehand, but this guy, it's not his fault, right? He picked up the phone a week before this show was supposed to take off and said, hey, I will help you fix this because it's a clusterfuck. Now, the president of said federation wants him to roll over and take the full responsibility of someone else's mistake under the promise that over the next year or 2, he's grooming him to be in a top position within the Federation. Man, I paused and I said, buddy, you're never going to get that position. It's not that I don't think you deserve it. He's asking you to take the fall so that you'll be the fall guy and the Federation will look clean. You didn't do this. You didn't plan it. You didn't hire these people. Essentially, you came to fix somebody else's mess, and now he wants you to take the fall for a show that not only was rigged, but that never ended. All of these competitors are going to want to know what happened, and you're going to be the bad guy when you had nothing to do with it. He said something along the lines of, I know he'll do right by me. I know it's a clusterfuck. I'm really sorry, Brandon, but this is just what's going to happen next. If you're listening to this, bro, I follow your social media still. I think you're a great dude. I don't think that position ever did pan out, and I hope you listen to this podcast and realize that this guy just fucked you. But hey, listen, all more power to you. It takes a big man to stand up in front of a lot of people and to accept responsibility, especially when the responsibility wasn't yours to begin with. I respect you for that decision, but the dude who asked you to take the fall for that knew exactly what he was doing. So here we are, years and years later. That show is so far removed from the internet and completely scrubbed that I have a physical copy signed from the guest poser of that show, and photos from me and my competitors from that photo shoot is basically the only vestige that that show actually existed. But why am I telling this story? I can honestly say, as a coach and as a competitor, this was my darkest moment in bodybuilding, for sure, bar none. There's no other memory I could think of that was as messed up and as absolutely career progression altering as this one. Because if you think for a second that I'm ever going to patron that organization or have my competitors patron that organization, never. 0% chance of that. And if it wasn't for legal reasons, I would blast them by name directly on this podcast. But the problem is, it's a spotlight on a bigger issue within the industry, and that's independent promotership, right? There's nothing wrong with being a promoter and trying to make basically the federation that you work for you, and to give a stage to competitors that you believe you can give the best voice and the best image and physical representation of what fitness and bodybuilding means on a stage. But the problem is, with little oversight, things like this not only happen. I'm sure that somebody out there has a much worse story about their competition. And there's plenty of shows that probably didn't end. I mean, we've all seen the videos on social media, like that one recent one in India where, nepotism caused this guy to win the show, and the guy who should have won the show kicks the blender off the stage and is kicked out of the venue. Stuff like this happens all the time all over the world. And so realistically, the point of this entire podcast is, this isn't the first show that this is going to happen at, and it's certainly not the last. You as a competitor and we as promoters need to decide. The federations that we sign up with should be giving us some type of oversight and some type of help in terms of, hey, these shows should be run succinctly. The quality of the product should be the same from show to show. The quality of the trophies, the quality of the judging, the quality of all of this stuff should be dictated by the head office. If it's not, then what you have is a bunch of rogue, vigilante type of promoters that are putting on shows with a logo to bring in competitors in terms of the trust that they have for those federations, but that realistically, that's where the affiliation ends. Independent contractors that are running whatever they see fit and just popping a logo up on top. If you're a competitor listening to this, and you've enjoyed this story of the darkest moment in my bodybuilding history that I wasn't even stepping on stage, that should tell you how dark it was for me. You need to ask yourself, do you trust the promoter? Do you trust the federation? And ask people who've gone to other shows. Have you done this federation? How do you feel about how they run shows? Is there anything that you would suggest not to do in terms of certain federations? And why do you say those things? I hope that this story has shed light on the fact that it's not just about pointing to a calendar and picking a show. Talk to people who've done that show in previous years, and if it's a first-year show, if you're not competing, at least go watch. See what the value in the show is. See the level of product that they put on, and then see if it's something that's really worth you and your competitors' time. And if you're from that federation, or you were at that show in Barcelona all those years ago, all I gotta say is, thanks for the great story, but fuck you for ruining that for my competitors, man. To the guy who counted the votes, to the people who rigged the show, you really ruined a great thing for people. And there were some first-time competitors in there that now don't compete anymore. That is why I tell this story, is because that's the last thing I want for somebody else. As always, this episode of the podcast is also brought to you by NutraBio. With no compromise since 1996, some of the best tasting products on the markets, and no proprietary blends ever, they've got a product that can help you. So, use code word NATTY at checkout to save, and always make sure that you mention the U-Natty States of America. Be sure to rate, view, subscribe, like, comment, all those things, and the U-Natty States of America. We'll see you next time, guys.